Hi, hello. So, I've seen the analytics from my last system deep dive. Yeah, so stick with me, I'll try and keep this intro short. Basically, I want to check out every single TurboGrafx-CD game, and by TurboGrafx-CD game, as that's not a real system by the way, I mean games for the TurboGrafx-16 CD add-on that also require the Super System Card add-on. That's a mouthful, so I'm just gonna go back to calling it the Super CD for the rest of the video. On top of wanting to go through every game, I also want to beat all of the games that 1. Have an unlimited continue system. Keep note me saying continue system and not save system. I'm purely talking about a continue system, unlimited at that. 2. Have an ending. And 3. That I haven't beaten before. Also, yes, bad endings do count as beating games. Last couple of notes, we'll only be going through games released in America officially, and we'll be going through the games in release order. So, alright, on to the games.
Ooga Bonk. Daba Duba. Ooga Mooga. Gate of Thunder!
So, Gate of Thunder, I finally get to play shoot 'em up for a bit. For context, I went through the whole Turbo normal CDs lineup and there's not a single shoot 'em up in there, so, finally, I get to play a shoot 'em up, and the game is, fine. It has really tight controls, feels really good. You have 3 different gun types, all have their place and work well. I enjoy all the bosses and the enemies. However, I just found the vibes to be lackluster. While it's nice to play shoot 'em up with a CD soundtrack, I found the music to be overly chill. I wish this game was like hype as fuck, and it's just not. The music is very, very soft rock. And on top of that, I found the first few levels in the game to be pretty slow. There were so many moments where I felt like I was just waiting for something to happen for the first about 20 minutes of the game. And this is a limited continue game, so every time you want to try beating it again after game over, you will have to go through those slow opening levels again, and it just got boring. I never got a game over and was like, hell yeah, let's try again. I was just like, I don't want to go through 20 minutes of boring shit to die in like 5 minutes once the game gets interesting. It just didn't appeal too much to me. Hating aside, I do like how this game looks. Some of the backgrounds are really fucking pretty. And really, this game does control it very, very, very well. It's one of those things where like, you don't notice the controls because they just control good and do exactly what you expect, you know? Just all around good controls. But yeah, here's the part where I admit that I've never really been a huge fan of shoot 'em ups in general. They can be fun, just I'm more of a cute 'em up kinda catboy.
Bonk's Adventure!
So people paying attention may have realized, Gate of Thunder came on a combo disc featuring Bonk's Adventure and Bonk's Revenge. Now these Bonk games are just straight ports from the TurboGrafx-16. I've already beat both these, however, I've never reviewed them on the YouTube channel, so yeah, sure, let's do that. What a unique game. Action platformer, except your attacks also let you float in the air when spammed. It also features a surprising amount of lore and all things in between. Bonk 1 has a lot of ideas, and I don't think it really lands any of them solidly, though not many of them fail, I wouldn't say. Also, in a side ramble, Bonk as a character scares me. Like, you ever see those sheep who get stuck on their back? I always feel like Bonk is gonna get, like, stuck on his head and unable to reach the floor with his little legs, and it's just scary. Anyways, I lost the plot. Bonk 1, fine action platformer, unique, solid 6 or 7 out of 10, it's fine.
Bonk's Revenge!
Then Bonk's Revenge. I don't know how they really did it, but Bonk's Revenge is charming, it's colorful, it's fixed some minor control issues I had with 1, it has better boss design. The levels in general are designed in just a lot more interesting ways. Bonk's Revenge is really good. It makes sense Bonk would become the mascot for the TurboGrafx playing this. Also, if it's not clear, this game is very similar to Bonk 1, so if you're wondering why I'm not explaining much about what it is, that's why. It's the same thing. But yeah, next game. I want to see more stuff designed, like, actually for the Super CD, not gonna lie. So, Prince of Persia. This is my first time looking at Prince of Persia. yeah, despite me playing a million retro games, I've just never gotten around to playing a port of it until now. It's very good. The controls take a while to get used to, but I found that process real fun. I've played a million action platformers, and it's nice to have to, like, actually learn the controls for one, feel myself slowly figuring out how to long jump, working out the timing. It's just a very nice puzzle to put together. And then this game also has very well designed levels, very strong difficulty curve work here, extremely well done. This is one of those games that really understands how to design levels for limited continues as well. And yes, this game technically has limited continues. It's weird. You have unlimited continues, but only for 1 hour. Once the hour is up, you will have to fully restart the game. So yeah, you will be replaying levels a lot. However, the levels are full of multiple routes and hidden items, so even when replaying the same level, you will be finding new stuff. That's not to mention there's a huge reward for learning how to get through levels faster, as that gives you more time for the later ones. It's kind of like learning a speedrun. It's very well done, and I can see why this game was a huge hit and got a million ports. Talking about this game being a port though, I do find it a weird choice to launch the system with a port. It's a very good port, but like, this is a game that also got a port on the NES. And don't get me wrong, this version of the game is significantly better than the NES port, but it doesn't really show what the system is capable of, and it does make me question why I had to buy the Super System card, as I feel like this could have easily ran on the basic Turbo CD. Also, last thing of note is I haven't beaten the game yet at the time of writing the script. I've almost beaten level 8 out of 12, and that's my best run. Point is, that, like, shadow version of yourself, I need to know more. I'm hooked on this game, and I want to see what's up with that, and I gotta beat this game, and just, I need to know where the plot goes. I'm hooked. This one's good. This is a very good game. Yeah, but on to the next one. Shapeshifter. This game fucking sucks. So the game starts out and you have a lot of just really cheap feeling voice acting, like no one's really trying except for the people whose voices have a yes and they speak like this the whole time, and it's like, shut the fuck up, please. Then the controls. I went on a ramble about this on stream and everyone in the chat hated me for it, but games where there's like no physics just feel a bit lazy to me. Like if you tap a direction and you instantly run at full speed in that direction, and then let go and you instantly stop. Some games can get away with it if they have level design that demands having controls that tight, but in most cases it just feels lazy to me. And then they made this horrible choice where if you're anywhere near the edge of a platform, even just thinking about the edge of a platform, you will be forced to fall. At an angle, they don't design around this. So a lot of the time during platforming sections, you'll stand a little too close to the edge, be forced to fall at an angle, land on another platform, but the angle you fell at will put you too close to the edge of that platform, so you'll be forced to fall again. And this cycle will repeat until you've lost all your progress, or until you've died, and you can't do anything about it once you fall off the first platform. And it's infuriating watching yourself land on a platform but fall again with nothing you can do to save yourself. It's genuinely some of the worst platforming I've seen in a game. So, the platforming in this action platformer sucks. But how's the action? Bad. They gave the player far too much health, so to add difficulty, they spawned in multiple enemies at once that you're just not equipped to deal with, forcing the player to take damage. And if that's not all, there's also a horrible health mechanic. Basically, every 5-10 minutes or so, the game will just restore all of your health, and the levels are designed around this. So, if you need health, you just hide in the corner and wait multiple minutes with nothing happening. I think it goes without saying that designing your action sequences to feature the player sitting down the controller and looking at the ceiling fan to try and pass the time as they wait for them to actually get health isn't fun. The one thing Shapeshifter has going for it is its scope. As the game implies, you can shapeshift into other animals as the game goes on. It's got a little depth to it, though these other animals still suffer from all of the control problems, if not even worse. Then there's the music and art. Both are competent, lacking in style, but they function. And then lastly, and luckily for me, Shapeshifter features 0 continues, so I don't have to finish this piece of shit. And with that, we've checked out 5 games, and I would like to rank them. So, Gate of Thunder, spot number 4, it's fine. Bonk's Adventure, spot number 3, it's alright, and has some fun to it. Bonk's Revenge, number fucking 1, good game, good charming game. Prince of Persia, number 2, incredibly solid game. Honestly, I flip-flop between this and Bonk's Revenge being number 1, and then lastly, and of course least, it's Shapeshifter. Terrible game. It's taking last place, number 5. And yeah, okay, back to the games. Shadow of the Beast. It's British. Very British. Originally released for the Amiga, I really don't know what else to say about this game other than it really is just insanely British. It's got the art that's very well done and just over the top. The gameplay is all reaction time without much thought put into it. The game is full of mazes, and the game is split into 5 levels, each ending with a boss. However, the game does have a little overworld full of enemies. It's an interesting vibe, I like it. It's kind of just throw everything and then some at the player and see what sticks. It's alright, yeah. But also, yeah, one of the bosses, if you fall into the arena too early without picking up a weapon, you will be forced to fully game over and restart the game. It's fucked. Luckily though, the game is only like 30 minutes long, and as you'd expect, it is limited continues, though even then I feel like it's a stretch. That's how the game markets itself, but this game has no lives, and continues essentially just act as lives, so, you know, there's that. You got like 2 lives. Beat the game, have fun. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about it. Like, it's really cool graphically, but that's about it. There's not much thought or depth to it. Yeah, so, short game. British. Forgotten Worlds, another shoot 'em up. I like this one a bit more than Gate of Thunder. Just had a bit more depth to it. You gotta aim your shots more by spinning your little gun thingamabob around, and the level design works very well with this mechanic having you constantly work between stuff behind you and in front. And aiming takes a second, so there's a nice risk versus reward of trying to take your time and aim, that way enemies aren't an issue for the future, or trying to avoid their shots really quickly, that way you don't get hit and just hope everything works out well enough. It's cool, it's good. Limited continues like most shoot 'em ups are, but it's good shit. Also, talking about the depth of the game, there's a shot mechanic. Enemies drop money, so there's a nice element of rushing forward to try and collect the money before it despawns, but also putting yourself in danger of enemies spawning right next to you because you're at the front of the screen. Just a very scary little element with a big reward. Good game. And the shops have so many items and weapons. Really, every playthrough can be different with you using different equipment, just helps keep shit fresh. And then the graphics are very nice, it's got a good style. The boss sprites are huge. I will say, the boss I recorded in this footage, it is nowhere near the most impressive looking boss in the game. You'll just have to play it yourself to see all the cool boss sprites. But here's, you know, a small taste of what the game has. And the levels all have these distinct themes, just very good shoot 'em up. Love the theming and graphics and On a side note, I do find it funny just how many of these games are ports of older games though. This one, it's from arcade, released in 1988. But yeah, I really enjoyed this game. Hopefully someday I'll beat it. As of right now, I've made it to about stage 5 out of 9. It's good shit. And our next game is Loom. Yeah, this is another game I've already played. I didn't expect there to be so many at the start here. But yeah, I played the original DOS release, and that version is a lot better than this one. Like, a lot better. Originally releasing in January 1990, Loom is a pretty slow-paced point-and-click adventure game, best known for having a ton of voice acting and music. It creates a very chill vibe. Personally, I don't recommend the game. Still talking about the DOS version, by the way. 90% of the game is just listening to a cutscene, slowly walking to the next area, trying every spell you have on every item in that area, watching more cutscenes, and repeat. And then this port of Loom isn't very good. The main issue is it removes all of the voice acting, the main selling point of the original game. It also removes a huge chunk of the cutscene animation, and it also removes a ton of the detail from the backgrounds, like a shocking amount of detail. And then you gotta control the cursor on screen with the D-pad, which is never fun. Have I mentioned that this release came out, like, years after the original? Yeah. Lastly, the game has a large focus on playing songs to create spells, and they replaced the soft synths your songs used to make with these really harsh beep noise, which does make sense from a technical limitation standpoint, but it's not good. If it's not clear, this version of the game is significantly worse in nearly every possible way. Not even in just the ways that porting a computer game to home console has issues, but in every step of the way, this port seems to have taken the lazy way out. So, yeah, I don't recommend. It's bad. play other versions, please. And with that, we're on to the next game. Dragon Slayer Legend of the Heroes. So, I went into this game with the wrong expectations. I thought this was a remake of Dragon Slayer in the same vein as like the East remakes on the normal TurboGrafx-CD. It was only after beating the game did I realize this is actually a port of Dragon Slayer Legend of the Heroes, and the fact that that is actually a completely different game. But yeah, it's a PC-88 game, originally released in late 1989. Knowing this game as a port makes a lot more sense. One of the most glaring things with this game is how it doesn't take advantage of the CD much at all. There's an opening cutscene and a well-done final cutscene, and it totals maybe 6 minutes. That's not much. To compare, Cosmic Fantasy II is an RPG released 6 months prior that has 30 minutes of animated cutscenes. Cosmic Fantasy II also originally released for the normal TurboGrafx-CD, and I'd say it's more impressive tech-wise, and that absolutely should not be the case. I know I keep complaining about how these games aren't doing much with the Super CD hardware, but the Super System card upgrade costs $145 when adjusting for inflation, so I'd hope to notice games being more advanced from it, and that just hasn't happened. Alright, and then one more complaint about the cutscenes. There's a lot of voice-acted moments in the middle of the game. They're neat, they could have been something cool, but they don't do anything visually for it. The characters don't walk around over to like the door they're talking about. They don't draw any of the portraits of the characters. The game just visually freezes, plays the MP3, and it feels lazy. I should probably explain the game itself. It's a pretty typical RPG. You move quickly in the overworld, and the fights also move quickly. However, these battles have no stakes. It's strange. It feels like this game doesn't even really want to be an RPG. There's absolutely zero punishment for death in a battle. When you die, you get to pick between spawning in a town with all of your XP, gold, basically everything, or you can retry the fight. So you never really have to care about anything like gameplay-wise. If your strategy doesn't work out, it's chill, just try again. Though there's also not much strategy. I mainly just spammed attack. Also, strangely early on, they give you warp magic that lets you warp between the towns without fighting anything, and to progress through the game, normally you just have to talk to a random NPC in a random town. So there were multiple hour sections in the middle of the game where I just didn't fight anything, because I didn't have to. It was just warp to random town, talk to everyone, plot thing happens, then go visit like the previous 4 towns and talk to everyone there until the game progresses. It was boring, I tell you. A part of the problem was progress felt so nonsensical. There was the part where you had to access an island, and rather than use one of the multiple boat docks in the game and travel to the island that way, what you actually had to do is find and ride a dragon. Don't get me wrong, riding the dragon was really cool, but I would have liked a hint or two to push me in that direction. That way I wouldn't have explored all of the more logical things first and wasted all my time. I found the game's progression just annoying, to put it lightly. To make matters worse, I found all of the towns to feel identical, same with Overworld. Look at this map of the game, it all looks the same. And just to make things clear, when I say progression is done nearly all through talking to NPCs, that does mean that the game has very few dungeons. The game really does just feel like a walking sim through towns. There's not much here. Then the music, it's pretty alright, sounds good, but there's just bad usage of it. The whole overworld uses one song, and the normal battle theme is also only one song throughout the entire game, and with a high encounter rate, which isn't a problem by the way with how fast the fights go, but it makes the music sound like this. It gets annoying having to listen to that for hours. Alright, final major complaint, the story, it's one note. Plot elements show up and then get dropped every hour or so, it never grows. They only start hyping up the big final boss, dragon, villain like an hour away from the ending. It's disappointing. It felt like a script to this video, you know? Random points thrown together in a way that's just not very interesting. Anyways, to end on a good note, I liked being able to run away from battles easily. I liked how fast the game felt control-wise. I liked some of the songs on the OST. And I liked the idea of splitting an RPG into chapters. And yeah. Okay, Dragon Slayer. It's an RPG that doesn't really want to commit to being an RPG. It feels finished though. I can't say that about Cosmic Fantasy II. Also, can you tell this is the first game that qualified for me finishing it with how long I'm rambling? Anyways. Next, Camp California. Huh, so, gets all the points and vibes. You play as a group of furries from California, the game has songs from the Beach Boys OST, the graphics sell the style, the vibe, it's all here. But end of the day, it is an action platformer and the game design felt bad. You have to memorize a majority of the enemies, and while I'm not fully against making the player memorize shit, this is a game that only gives the player one continue, so you will have to remember everything in the game to get a winning run. It's annoying. And then the game also has this mechanic where each furry has different movement. Fun, cool, however sometimes you can only beat a level as a certain furry. And if you don't have that furry yet, you'll have to move between levels. And one of the stranger mechanics I've seen in a game, it costs fuel to move between levels, and if you run out of fuel, you'll lose a life. So yeah, you gotta trial and error your way through the level order, then memorize the correct order. It's not good. Then last complaint of the game is just the controls are stiff. It's not great. It's fine. And with all that being said though, I do recommend this game. Just off of vibes, honestly. It's fun. Waste 30 minutes in it, have a good time, listen to the music, be like I'm a bear. Yeah. Just don't expect a good game design. And just one more note, not relating to the game, if you're wondering what's up with the audio in this video, I am muting the game footage audio and replacing it with a song from the game's OST. My video on the normal TurboGrafx-CD had some complaints about it just being overwhelming to watch, which fair enough, it is. It's a very fast-paced video, or at least I tried to. So, in this one I'm trying to slow down the editing and also doing the weird audio thing, just to try and make audio less busy. Not sure how people will respond to that change, so yeah. Tell me in the comments, I guess. Ramble aside, video games. Let's rank them because I'm a YouTuber or something. Not really, I'm mainly a Twitch streamer, but whatever. Anyway, starting us off is Shadow of the Beast, taking spot number 5. It's not great, but it's interesting, it's got me hooked. Yeah, spot number 5. And then, Forgotten Worlds. This game really grew on me as time went on. Spot number 3. I like this a lot. Loom. Given that I complained the whole time while I was reviewing it, it should be no surprise that it's number 9. It's better than Shapeshifter though. Dragon Slayer. I was really hoping this would be the East Book 1 and 2 for the system. For context, I rated East as the number 1 game for the Turbo Normal CD, so yeah, I had high expectations for this game. And yeah, number 7. I wanted better. Camp California! I know it's in spot number 8, and I know that's a low ranking, but this game, it's fun. Just kinda bad, but it's fun. Sorry. Okay, anyways, it's time for more games. Let's go. Riot Zone. Yeah, so I'll admit, I'm not the biggest fan of beat-em-ups overall, and this game is limited continues, so honestly, I wasn't planning on playing it for very long, but I beat the game my first try, and it's not a super short game. It's about an hour long, and for a limited continue game, that's pretty long, I'd say. It is on the easy side. You might be able to guess that given me beating this my first try. You fight every enemy the exact same way, you just kinda jump and kick. Yeah, there's not much happening in this game, I don't fucking know. I jumped and kicked for an hour straight and I won. I can say though that some of the backgrounds look very nice, and having all these large sprites with no flicker or slowdown feels like something you could only do on the Super System card upgrade, so that's neat. But yeah, it's repetitive, you jump and you kick shit, that's about it. What's next? Lords of Thunder! This game is so good. It's a shoot 'em up, it takes full advantage of the Super System card, and it looks so good. The bosses are so cool, and the game looks so good, and the controls are so good, and the levels are so good, and it's got good mechanics and bosses, and Have you been able to tell by now that I'm bad at talking about things I like? Natural born hater. Anyways, this is a limited continue game, but it just fucking gets it. Each attempt is different. You start the game and there are 6 levels, and you can pick from and do these levels in any order you want. It helps keep the game fresh. It's very, very nice. You also have a shop mechanic that keeps things fresh. It adds in some strategy of learning which levels you can compete with few resources. That way you can save up resources to do the harder levels easier, and good game. If that's not enough to keep the game fresh, you also have 4 different weapons you can pick from at the start of every level, and you can do different amounts of damage and have different bullet patterns with all of them, and it's so refreshing. And then if that's still not enough, this game also has 4 difficulty options to add even more replay value. This game just fucking gets it. This is the first game I've played for the system that has shown that the Super System card really is capable of upgrading the system, and I feel like a broken record at this point, but honestly, playing this game borderline makes me mad about nearly every game released before this one, Every game before this one hasn't seemed to really use the hardware much at all, and it feels like a scam to have to buy the Super System card for games that don't even use it. But Lords of Thunder, this game fucking uses it. I cannot overstate how much higher quality this game is compared to everything else. It's a very good game. I cannot overstate that. I hope this system can keep up the quality. Also, just play this game. Just play it. Play it. Please go play it. Thank you. Please. Please. Anyways, our next game is another beloved shoot 'em up called Cotton Fantastic Night Dreams. So this is another game I've beaten before. This keeps happening. I beat the PS1 version, so it's a very, very, very cute 'em up. Good art here. Also, at one point in time, I would have told you this was my favorite 'em up. However, on replay, I found the game lacking. I need to make it clear, I think Cotton is a very good game. However, playing it directly after Lords of Thunder, it got very easily overshadowed. It deserves better, but it did. It got so overshadowed. While the game does have fantastic bosses and levels in general, it does lack the replayability that I want from my games like this. You'll be restarting the game a lot, as this is a difficult game with limited continues, and this game does what a lot of shoot 'em ups do, where as the game goes on, your shooting power levels up, and then when you die, it goes down a ton, so when you make a mistake in later levels, you'll be left with worse equipment, and that'll leave you in a downward spiral, very quickly taking all of your lives. And yeah, this is a game where you die in one hit, so oh boy, hope you're playing very good. To be honest, I find this mechanic annoying to deal with. A lot of games do it, but I do find it annoying. It means you can have a really good run and just lose it all at the very end no matter what, and it's just like, really? It means you have to repeat the whole game again, and you know, the game, it plays exactly the same on repeat. It's a very linear game. There's no shops to like change your equipment. It's always the same essentially, and like, I much prefer how Lords of Thunder works. I also swear the PS1 version added in difficulty options, and I would have loved to seen that option here, but as is, it doesn't seem this version of Cotton has any sort of settings, so that doesn't help with replay value when there's only one difficulty option. Like, I cannot overstress, every time you play this game it will be exactly the same. It's got fun levels, but it's just stale, you know? You play it for like an hour and it's just like, okay, that's enough. It's also worth noting Cotton is a decently short game, featuring 6 levels, then a final boss, so it 100% does need the limiting continues. I wish there was more here. With all that being said though, I do think Cotton is a good game. Like, look at this footage, it's good shit. Just, it got heavily overshadowed. It's probably not the best choice for releasing it directly after Lords of Thunder, but, you know, good game. And, oh boy, on to the next one. SimEarth. Man, I have no idea what to say about this. I think I just don't understand it. Maybe this would have been fun if I had like a kid's curiosity in me, but like I don't. Basically, you take control of a planet and then you do things and see how the inhabitants react. You can like clear tiles with fire, or clear tiles with bombs, or clear tiles with an earthquake, or clear tiles with a tornado. Yeah, not much happened for me. You can also like pick up things and move them, build factories and watch your planet's health move ever so slightly down. The game's manual will tell you there's no ending or objectives really, or goals or anything. It says do whatever you want and see what happens, and for me, nothing happened. I'd barely call this a game. So, editing depths, get us out of here and bring us to the next game, please. It's Dungeon Master. So, I'm gonna be honest, going by the rules of this challenge, I'm totally meant to beat this game, but I didn't. This game is one of the most miserable gaming experiences I've had, and I just couldn't take anymore. At its core, Dungeon Master's problem is that it's incredibly boring. Graphically, you'll be staring at blank gray walls 90% of the time, and the other 10% of the time you'll be looking at incredibly poorly drawn enemies. And then sound design. It does have some good songs, though strangely these songs don't loop and tend to only play once at the start of a dungeon, so the majority of the time you'll be listening to the sound of water dripping, because that's fun. The game design, it's also not great. It's a dungeon crawler with 7 different dungeons. Between each dungeon, you lose nearly all of your resources, so there isn't really much of a reason to farm or play good, as your stats will reset anyways between everything. And then the fights in the game boil down to moving your cursor over to the attack button with the D-pad, because of course it uses a D-pad, and just clicking on the button. It's slow, it's annoying, it doesn't do much. And then, you'll be using healing magic. To get magic, you just have to wait around and do nothing. You just stand in place, leave the game, grab a snack. Honestly, any game with a mechanic that requires the player to do nothing for multiple minutes consistently throughout the game has completely failed at being a game in my opinion. It's bad. You see those blue symbols on the right? You gotta click on those in the correct order to cast a spell. In order to know the pattern you have to click, you have to read the manual. I think it goes without saying that stopping the game to flip through a manual every single time you want to cast a spell, it gets insanely annoying. There's nothing fun about it. So, the game's called Dungeon Master. Let's talk about the dungeon layouts. Most dungeons are basically long linear paths, except you'll have to hit hidden switches in the walls throughout, and the only way to see the switches is to face the wall directly. So it's a lot of take a step forwards, turn left, look at the wall, turn around, look at the wall. Do you understand the problem with this? Do you understand why I hate this game? Hopefully. It's just slow, it's poor design, like everything in this game, it's annoying. The controls. Dungeon Master was originally designed for computers, with a mouse. The TurboGrafx doesn't have a mouse, so you'll be stuck with a slowly moving cursor with the D-pad. It's bad, but that's not all. For some reason, they decided that you should only be allowed to move so fast. So if you tap forwards 4 times, really quickly, rather than have your character move forwards quickly, what happens is you take 1 step forwards, wait a while, take another step forwards, wait a while, and repeat 4 different times. It buffers your inputs, and it makes movement incredibly annoying. Yay! So after playing this, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, just what the fuck happened? This is a heavily reworked port of a Atari ST game from 1987 that shortens the game, removes items, removes spells, removes some monsters, controls significantly worse. How the fuck did this release? Fun fact, there were over 200 games made for the TurboGrafx-CD, and under 30 got released over here in America. Was this game really in the top 30 games? I highly, highly doubt it. Anyways, it's been a while. Let's rank some games. Let's go. Riot Zone. It's perfectly fine, kinda boring, there's nothing interesting to it. Spot number 11, Lords of Thunder. Amazing game. I have nothing but amazing things to say about it. Number 2, Codden. What a charming little game. I just wish it had more. Number 6, middle of the pack. SimEarth. This isn't even like a game. Spot number 14. Dungeon Master. One of the worst games I've ever played. Spot number 15. Terrible, terrible game. So, as you may have noticed, spot number 1 is blank. That's because I finally beat Prince of Persia. What a good fucking game, it goes to number 1. I do wish the final boss was a bit harder though, but yeah, insanely good game, just barely edges out Lords of Thunder. And with that, more video games, whoa! Sid meets Terraforming. Yeah, I didn't expect this to be a shoot 'em up, but that's what it is, and it is an interesting one. The first major difference, compared to the rest of the shoot 'em ups on this system so far, is this one has unlimited continues. Yeah, this game qualifies for finishing. Then this game really focuses on the art. It's got an interesting vibe to it. With all that being said though, this game's a complete mess. Just a complete mess. It's an enjoyable one though. Like, this game has a really neat soundtrack, however, it's pretty quiet compared to the sound effects. The strongest gun in the game sounds like a dentist drill. It's terrible, I kinda love it. And then this game uses this font for the numbers that's like, not readable at all. So who knows how many lives you have at any given point. And the background for some levels has a ton of movement and it looks really good. However, the enemy bullets sometimes use the exact same color as the background, and since they both also move a ton, it's like impossible to see some of the bullets in the game. It's a mess. However, unlimited continues. So, whatever, the stakes aren't that high. It's chill, it's fun, it's good. Oh, the bosses. They're something. They're all interesting. However, I swear you can only hurt some bosses if you have the correct gun type, so I find that funny. Also, the final boss feels ripped straight from R-Type. Just a funny game. Mechanically, there's not a ton in this game. You have 3 special guns you can upgrade, same deal as a Gate of Thunder, and you can also upgrade your base gun, and your base gun will increase your health. And then you can shoot behind you using your thrusters. Lastly, you can change your movement speed anywhere. It controls well, just good all around, and I really do like the whole movement speed thing, it helps a ton. So, yeah, Terraforming. Is it a good game? Maybe. It's fun. I'd recommend it. And with that, yeah, game's a mess. Next game starts now. Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective 2. Wow. 3 games in a row being able to qualify for beating. That's crazy. I've also already talked about Sherlock Holmes 1 for the TurboGrafx-CD. You can see that review in my TurboGrafx-CD video. I mentioned this because my review is probably going to be short on this game, as this game reuses the same gameplay cycle and the majority of the graphics from the first game, but for those who aren't aware, Sherlock Holmes games are split into 3 stories. Each story, your job is to write down the names of the characters set in the plot, talk to those characters, and then at the end of the story, recap the plot points. It's also one of the few games to use live-action FMV on the system in America, so that's cool. The major flaw with the game, however, is there's no subtitles, and it can be really hard to hear the names through the fake British accents. And then figuring out how to spell those names is nearly impossible sometimes, because, you know, names have different spellings even if they're pronounced the same. It's fucked up. And for it being a main game mechanic, like, that is the game, borderline ruins the entire game. But anyways, talking about Sherlock Holmes 2 proper for a second and not the series as a whole, I do think the cutscenes look a bit better, and the amount of names has been cut down, so that helps. However, I found the stories to be less interesting, same goes for the characters, but the load times are also better. But overall, I do prefer the first game. Yet again, the Super CD has fallen behind the normal CD version of the game. That 100% should never be the case, but in a detective game having an uninteresting story and heavily flawed gameplay, there was no hope for it. But anyways, I'm excited for this next game. Somehow. Yeah. Exile, Wicked Phenomenon. So, follow-up to Exile from the TurboGrafx-CD. To recap my thoughts on Exile, it's a game with a lot of promise, however strong censorship of the plot and being just far too easy to be engaging caused it to be a solid 6 out of 10 game, and not the masterpiece it could have been. And then, because of how much backlash Exile 1 got for being easy, English localizer Working Designs decided to make Wicked Phenomenon significantly harder. They claim it's a bug that made the game so hard. There's a large chunk of evidence against that. In any case, this game has a reputation for being just insanely hard. Nearly everywhere you look, you will find people calling this game straight up impossible, or at least the, you know, localization. So with expectations set, what is Exile Wicked Phenomenon? It's a pretty linear action platformer. Yeah, unlike Exile 1, there's a lot less focus on the plot and RPG elements. While there are still RPG-style towns, they basically only serve to give you new weapons and a place to buy health items, but gone as well is the magic mechanic, and, you know, any sort of depth to these towns. You can't even backtrack to the previous areas, that's how unimportant they are. In place of the magic mechanic, you can now play as multiple characters. Each have a different attack and stats from one another. It's a nice bit of depth to the game. And then since we're talking about the mechanics, one of the funnier ones that really helps set the vibe for just what this game is all health items have RNG to them. Most of the time you'll get a small heal, then 25% of the time you'll get a full heal. Lastly, and why I call it funny, is 25% of the time you'll take damage. In a harder game, I'd have a major issue with this mechanic, but, like, whatever. Just make sure you have enough health items where you can roll till you land on full health, it's fine. Talking about the difficulty this game is known for, I didn't have an issue with it at all, really. Like, yeah, the game is more difficult than your average, but more than anything, it just kind of, like, has the audacity. The game starts out, and literally in the very first dungeon, you will have to farm for, I'd say, around an hour or so, just to have a chance at winning. And then in another case, there's a boss that takes over 20 minutes of attacking them to kill them. Not 20 minutes of attempts. 20 minutes in a single attempt, spamming attack. It's insane, I enjoy it. It makes the game memorable. But besides that hour-long farm at the start of the game and the 20-minute boss fight in the middle, the game really wasn't that hard. Like, to the point I feel like I played a different game than every other review online. I think one of the big things is, well, first off, action platformers are my specialty. I play a fuck ton of action platformers, so they're probably easier for me than the average person, especially someone who's going in expecting an RPG-style experience. And then, this game is, like, broken, and I wonder how many people caught on just how broken it is. Like, I saw a lot of people online talking about how the other characters have no uses, but like, you know, Rumi has a really long-range attack that can kill most enemies before they're on screen or trying to attack you or anything. You know, you can just get rid of everyone before it's even remotely a problem. Another is there's a glitch where you can jump every single time you change characters. So you can jump in the air, pull up the menu, change characters, and then jump again. And you can just kind of stay in the air forever like that. If the room has a high ceiling, just, you know, go over all the enemies. It's fine. And then last example, I saw a ton of people complaining about the Lawrence fight and it being too hard and how he kills you in 3 hits, but like, just buy health items. With max health items, you should easily be able to take 13 hits every attempt, and then if you get good RNG, honestly, you might be able to get up to 20. Like, you can make mistakes in this game. I'd be interested in watching someone else play this game just to understand, like, where people are having trouble with it. It's strange. Like, it's got some challenge, but hardest game in the world? No. Anyways, the graphics. I found the graphics actually pretty good in this game. First off, this game actually takes place in like full screen. It's not in a tiny window like Exile 1 is. And also, I found every environment in this game to feel different from one another. It really felt fresh the entire time through. The entire time I was playing, I was like, oh damn, I want to see what the next like idea is. And yeah, they did that really well. Not that they took advantage of the Super CD capabilities in like any way, but it's good. Then the controls. I found the controls pretty alright. Interesting note about the controls is just how far forwards you have to walk for the camera to pan. Like, you have to be like on the edge of the screen for the camera to start like panning in the direction you want it, and like, oh my god, it's a terrifying mechanic. But all in all, it controls pretty fine. Yeah. And then lastly, the story. You need to take out the wicked phenomenon. You need to destroy the evil of the world. And you do that by going town to town and destroying evil force. It's dumb. But like, whatever. You play it for the game. And yeah, that's Exile 2. I enjoyed it. I think this game could have definitely used more time to make in general. Like, yeah, this game does not feel finished. It's a very strange game in what they finished. But I enjoyed it. Anyways, I'm rambling. We need to go on to the next game. John Madden Duo CD Football! It's football. It has some F&B. It's kinda neat. However, I don't like football, and I find this game a little slow, a little repetitive, like most football games. I don't have much to say about the sport of football. I don't know, it's football. Next game. Dungeon Explorer 2! It was so close to being good, but I found the game overall just kinda bland. Honestly, I don't have a ton to say about it. It's an open-world Zelda-style game, except with like gauntlet-style combat. It's an interesting idea, and it also has a much more linear overworld than your Zelda-style games, but yeah. The gameplay loop was pretty simple. It was just follow the path, find the dungeon, walk forwards until the enemy spawner appears, hold the attack button until the spawner dies, walk forward some more, repeat until you've killed all the spawners, maybe find a boss, and then the bosses, you know, they slowly move towards you, shoot things you can't avoid, so I don't know, I just ended up tanking everything and it worked just fine. It's a pretty easy game all in all, but it was just so simple and it got bland so quickly. If I'm being nice to this game, it does have a very impressive scope. It features 25 bosses, 10 playable characters, all with different stats and play styles. It's really neat. It also features some really well done cutscene animations. Like, this game has a lot going for it, and then it just does it in the most bland way possible. Anyways, if I'm talking more about the graphics, the game itself, it's overly dark and all the towns look the same. It's dull. Everything about this game is just dull. It's strange. You know? Like, overall, the game, it really is fine. Just a little on the easy side, but it's fine. I think its major flaw is just how it's a sequel to Dungeon Explorer 1, and it doesn't update the gameplay whatsoever. This game is very much just the same, except bigger, and that leaves this game just feeling heavily dated and basic, and it just doesn't do much. I wish they updated the gameplay formula to add just in a lot more. Also, it doesn't help that this is a Super System card game, where the original was a TurboGrafx-16 game, so, you know, you gotta spend hundreds of dollars on upgrades to your system to play this game, and then this game plays exactly the same. It feels like a scam. It really does. And then for a little more context about Dungeon Explorer 1, it released in early 1989. This game released in 1993. In between those two releases, games such as Star Tropics, Golden Axe Warrior, Neurotopia 2, Landstalker, and Link to the Past all released. This genre moved forwards a ton, and Dungeon Explorer 2 just doesn't reflect that at all. It's an alright game, there's nothing really bad about it, it's a very solid 6 out of 10, just it could have been so much more. And with that, let's rank some games. Wow! Gaming. Anyways, Sid Mead's Terraforming, spot number 8. It's a mess, but it's a lovable one. Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective 2, much like the first one, it's a detective game that fails to write an interesting story or really do anything good with the genre, and as such, spot number 17. Exile Wicked Phenomenon, another just complete mess of a game, less lovable this time, and more just really funny, really entertaining. I enjoyed my playthrough of Exile 2 a lot. It's a good game. Not as good as the top tier shit though. Spot number 4. John Madden Duo CD Football. I don't know, it's football. It's functional. Spot number 15, if only for the fact that it's not bad, it's a game. Yep. Dungeon Explorer 2. Despite being a simple dated game, I am a retro streamer after all, and being dated has never stopped me from liking something, so yeah, spot number 6. It was a fine time. Perfectly fine game. And with that, would you believe it? Are you ready? Are you ready for this part? We're gonna play more video games, okay? Okay, here's the next video game. So, beyond Shadowgate, they sure tried to make a game. It's a point-and-click adventure that also really wants to have a combat system. So what ends up happening is you enter a room and you're never really sure if it's actually a puzzle or if you just need to punch a wall 50 million times. It's a very strange experience. As a whole, the game is pretty heavily flawed, mainly for the fact that it just doesn't feel like they ever made a decision. The game doesn't really have any direction. It feels like they just let the developers just come up with ideas and didn't think about if it would flow whatsoever. It's strange. For example, the goal of the game is to have items that represent the 4 elements, and there are 7 of these items. So 3 of these items will be completely pointless to your playthrough and you can just skip their entire respective sections. And then at the end of the game, you will need one of 3 key items. Each of these 3 items requires solving multiple inventory object puzzles, and it's a huge chunk of the game. However, yeah, you only need one of the items. So the other huge chunks of the games from the other 2 items just don't matter, you can just skip it. To make things worse, the game also has a gold mechanic, and there's a limited amount of gold, and you need to spend gold to solve some of the puzzles, and it's fully possible to spread yourself too thin between the different puzzles, run out of gold, end up finishing 0 of the puzzles, and softlock the game. Talking about softlocks, if you're missing an item near the end of the game, there are multiple points you can just softlock. You enter a room and you're just not allowed to leave because you don't have the item. Though, honestly, it's not a major problem as this game is pretty short all in all. Also, a majority of the work on this game was spent in the town area. They put so much effort into the town area and having so much voice acting and items to interact with. However, these items require gold to interact with, and if you spend your gold on the wrong thing, you will softlock. So, it's strange, there's so much effort put there, and you just can't interact with any of it. It's bad. I think the game would have been significantly better if rather than forcing the player to choose between what puzzle to do and punishing the player for trying to do multiple, if the puzzles were set up in, a more classic linear fashion, make the player solve all of the puzzles, which would 1, make the game longer, and 2, would remove the softlocks. I really wish they did that. Then talking about the puzzles themselves, honestly they aren't half bad. A bit simple, but honestly I'd rather simple puzzles in a game like this rather than ones over-reliant on moon logic. final few things of note are the game has some really nice death animations. The game also has really nice pre-rendered backgrounds. They look really good. The cutscenes don't look great though, so that's a shame. Also, I wish the walking speed was faster. I swear half this game is just backtracking and slowly walking from screen to screen. And the music repeats a ton and is overly annoying. And the story's next to non-existent. It's short. It's inoffensive. It's fine for the most part. Like, the game could have used so much more time in development, but, yeah, I don't know. It's a game. Talking about games, it's time for the next one. It's the Dynastic Hero! So, instantly by looking at it, you might be able to tell this is a port of Wonder Boy 5 from the Genesis, and as such, this game barely uses the CD at all. Yay! With that being said though, I am a big fan of the Wonder Boy series, and this game, it's good. It's more linear than the previous game in the series, Wonder Boy Dragon Trap, but it still features a bit of mystery in where you can go and what you can do. It also cuts down on the amount of farming you have to do by a lot. I think I farmed for maybe 30 minutes in total of this game, it really wasn't much. And also, Dragon Trap relies a lot on RNG to determine how much health the player has, and that mechanic, it fucking sucks, and it's finally dead. It's not featured in this game, and oh my god, I love that so much. It makes this game so much better than Dragon Trap. Just that change alone, it's so good. But anyways, what is Dynastic Hero? Because I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. It's a pretty simple action platformer with light RPG elements. You can buy better armor, weapons, and interestingly, you can buy different boots to change your movement speed. Along with that, sometimes you'll need to find an item in order to access the next area. It's pretty simple stuff all in all. But it does everything very well. It has good graphics, it has good vibes, it has just good design. It's one of those games that just flows. There's not much to say other than it's a very solid game with, in my opinion, no real issues. And it also has enough challenge to keep it interesting, just very, very good. Also, all of the throwbacks to Wonder Boy 2 are seen, and they're so good, and I love this game. It's a good game, you should play it. I'd highly recommend this one. Like, Dynastic Hero is equivalent to essentially just like floating on a lake. Is it the most shocking, life-changing experience in the world? No. Is it something that's gonna make you say, oh my god, this fucks? No. But it's gonna be a wonderful time, and you should play it. I'd highly recommend it. I do wish it had more CD cutscenes though, or just use the CD at all, but I'm rambling. Anyways, on to the next game. Super Air Zonk! This game should have been amazing. So for people who are unaware, this is a sequel to Air Zonk, an insanely well done shoot 'em up for the TurboGrafx-16. So you continue that game onto a CD system with significantly better hardware, and it's gonna be fantastic, right? Yeah. So, it's bad. I think the major problem is just that Super Air Zonk moves significantly slower. On top of that, nearly every level has sections that just completely lack enemies. It's extremely common to just sit there and wait for anything to happen. And that's not great in a shoot 'em up, I wouldn't say. And if that's not all, bosses also have a ton of health now, which isn't a terrible thing in its own. But gone are the fast-paced complete chaos boss battles, and now the bosses like barely attack because, you know, the battles last so long that they had to make the pattern extremely easy. So, yeah, it's fucked up. There were multiple mid-bosses where I didn't even have to move. I just held down the attack button and had to wait a couple minutes for it to end. It was very exciting. If major pacing issues weren't enough, your attack has far less depth to it now. In the original Air Zonk, you had a standard attack, a charge attack, bombs, and then 7 gun power-ups, and with each of those gun power-ups, that changed your charge attack. So essentially think 7 different charge attacks. Super Air Zonk removes the charge attack, and the unique charge attacks with each power-up, because of course it does. Then the last major issue when comparing to the original Air Zonk, the art. For the most part, a lot of the art is reused from the original, and I will give them credit that the bosses, while in my opinion they do look worse than Air Zonk, they still look nice. But the major issue is the backgrounds. They look significantly worse than the original Air Zonk. And let me just remind everyone, in order to play Super Air Zonk, you had to have bought the TurboGrafx-CD add-on, and the Super System Card add-on, costing with inflation around $910-ish. Or later on, starting in 1993, you could have bought the Turbo Duo, a system that combined the TurboGrafx-16 and the CD add-on into one. You'd still have to buy the Super System card add-on though, and going that route would cost you, you know, just a casual nearly $800 with inflation. For even more context, the base TurboGrafx-16 with inflation was a little under $400. So, yeah, the fact that the under $400 system looks significantly better than the $900 system, hard to feel good about that one. Lucky for me, it's 2024 and I'm not paying retail prices for these systems. But still, the fact that they keep releasing games for the at best $800 system that look, play, and feel far worse than the base $400 system, it's shocking. Anyways, back on topic, Super Air Zonk. When removed from its context, it's fine. Definitely one of the weaker shoot-em-ups on the system with its pacing issues and short runtime, but I do think the final level is fun, and yeah, I got like 2 hours of enjoyment out of it. Let's move on to the next game. Might and Magic 3. Can I be honest with you? This is another game like Dungeon Master where I meant to beat it for this video, however, honestly, my brain just isn't big enough for this game. It's a large first-person dungeon crawler sort of thing. The game gives you very little direction and kinda just says fuck around and maybe you'll figure something out. You control at minimum 6 different people, all with different stats and powers. The game is absolutely massive, featuring like 20 large maps on game FAQs and a 45-hour runtime on how long to beat. Not to mention this game also heavily expects you to have already played Might and Magic 1 and 2 for the full experience. And please forgive me for not doing a full playthrough and proper research of the game. When including the first and second game, it's estimated to be 150 hours of gaming, and that's just a marathon farther than I'm willing to go for a 2-minute review. With all that being said though, I can review this game based on first impressions to give y'all something. I found the game to just be overwhelming in its lack of direction to the player, and I found the D&D style atmosphere and plot to just be incredibly uninteresting to me. These style of plots have never really worked for me. However, I do like how the game looks and its controls. It controls so much better than Dungeon Master. It's a very solidly made game, and the automat feature is really sweet in a game this big. Lastly, I found some of the animations like the horse running in the training area to be really well done. I think this game could have been a really nice chill time for someone who has any interest in D&D style adventures, and if I had to pick between this or Dungeon Master, I'd pick this easily, but yeah, it's a 45-hour game that just really doesn't do anything that interesting to me personally. Just these style of atmospheres just don't work for me, so I'll pass. Please forgive me. Godzilla! You like play as Godzilla and you like fight other fucked up creatures, and that's the game. It's a pretty simple one, and the controls aren't great with this being a fighting game on a system with 2 main buttons, and one of those buttons is used to jump. However, despite all odds, they managed to give the player 13 different attacks and a whole power gauge for some of those attacks. The power of button combos, you know? It's like insane. With that being said though, this is yet again another fighting game where I had by far the most success playing it by button mashing. I would have liked a little more strategy, and there probably is, but I didn't need to find it, so, you know, does it exist? But as is, I just kind of spent the 30 minutes this game takes to beat rotating the D-pad and spamming attack to see what combo would come from it, and you know, it was cool. Yeah, sure. Mentioning the game's length though, yeah, it's short. It features 6 stages per playthrough, and this isn't a fighting game where you gotta win multiple rounds to beat the opponent. Once you win once, you win the whole thing. But despite the seemingly short runtime, this game does have an insane amount of replay value. For starters, there's 3 different difficulty options, and then you get to pick between 2 different battles in the first 5 stages. Lastly, there are 6 different final stages. What final stage you can pick depends on how high of a score you got throughout the game. Meaning, while yes, a single playthrough of the game has 6 stages, but in total the game has 16 stages, and it requires at least 6 playthroughs to see all of the endings. Also, yeah, it's a fighting game, so the 2-player option has to be good, right? And it is. Featuring 15 different monsters to pick from, all with very different attacks and movement. It keeps things very fresh, and honestly, I just like seeing all of the character designs. It's just cool as fuck. And one last thing, the soundtrack, it's so fucking good, and for what? Why does the Godzilla soundtrack have more depth to it than 90% of the games on this system? It's really good. Anyways, Godzilla. It's a pretty bad game on paper, however, there's just so much charm in this game that I can't help but like it, even if it did make me rotate on a D-pad for 30 minutes straight and destroy my thumb every playthrough. It's neat, vibe sell it, time for our next, and also final game. Bonk 3, Bonk's Big Adventure. So this is an interesting case, originally releasing in Japan in April 1993 and later in August 1993 in America. Bonk 3 is a lackluster one. One of the many reasons for this is the game wasn't made by Red Company, the people who made Bonk 1 and 2. Instead, it's made by AI Company Ltd. Their experience is they ported Bonk 1 to the NES. So when designing Bonk 3, they ignore every single improvement Bonk 2 makes to the series, because, you know, that's not their game. They go from Bonk 1 to Bonk 3, and oh boy. To make matters worse, Bonk 3 reuses a lot of the locations from Bonk 1 and 2, putting its level design in direct comparison, a battle which it loses. Simply put, Bonk 3 tends to remove the more unique, interesting parts of the levels that would require animation work, or just work in general, and replaces them with a growth mechanic. There's these little candies that you can find to make you big or small, and sometimes you need to search the level to find a candy to fit through a hole. You know, it's a fun fetish, but it does bring the sections of the game to just a complete crawl. Last topic about the levels. Most of the new locations in the game don't fit the theme. If it's not clear, Bonk is meant to be a caveman, and the games are meant to have that prehistoric theme to them. It's generic, but it's something. And then in Bonk 3, you have multiple levels that just don't fit whatsoever. Like the big house level. Why are we going through a big modern-day house? What? It undermines the already generic theme, and is bad. Then the boss fights. Bonk 1 has major issues with it being unclear where you can hurt the bosses, and how you can hurt them without hurting yourself. Sometimes you hit the boss and it hurts you, sometimes it doesn't hurt you. It feels completely broken, and I'd make the argument it's borderline unplayable. And with this game ignoring all of the improvements from Bonk 2, we have the exact same issues here as Bonk 1 in this game. It's terrible. Also, the whole final boss section in this game just pisses me off. Bonk 2 has this whole major build-up and fake-out and cutscenes all hyping up the final boss. And then Bonk 3 reuses that exact same final boss, except without any of the build-up, or cutscenes, or fake-out, or anything. You just go through the same style boss door you go through for every other boss, and then he's just like there. It's lazy as fuck. Though, if I'm to be nice about Bonk 3, I do like the controls on paper. They're unresponsive and worse than previous games, but still good on paper. Okay, this time we're actually gonna be nice. I think the music is alright, and the character design is still good from the previous games. Also, the main improvement in Bonk 3, the game now supports multiplayer. 2 Bonks running around at once. I'm sure that's neat for someone with friends. And unlimited continues. I enjoy having unlimited continues. It's a fun, just good mechanic. I enjoy it, yeah. Anyways, I've been rambling, but let's actually get on topic. Bonk 3 for the Super CD. How does it compare to the original TurboGrafx-CD release? It's worse. Not by much though. They really don't make many changes to the game. They changed the soundtrack for CD quality music. It's a welcome change, though I do personally prefer the old soundtrack, it just had more life to it. They also add in 4 different multiplayer minigames. That's neat, I guess. And then the big thing. They remove a good chunk of the sprite animation, and the game just runs worse in general. It's a bit slower, less responsive. Nothing like major, but the fact that the $400 setup runs Bonk 3 noticeably better than the $800 setup is unacceptable. That's not to mention the Super CD version of Bonk 3 released 20 months after the original TurboGrafx-CD version. This isn't a rushed port, and with that, it's time for our final game ranking. Beyond Shadowgate, it's silly. I can't rank it that low. Sorry. Spot number 13. The Dynastic Hero. Just a damn good time, 3rd place. Super Air Zonk, what the fuck happened to you? Spot 12. Might and Magic 3. Honestly, I don't think I played enough of this game to give it a proper ranking, but it seems like a fine time, just not for me at all. Spot 17. Godzilla, Things Go Boom. Yippee. Spot 8. And lastly, Bonk's Big Adventure, spot 19. Shame. And that's my ranking. However, I feel like I should make it clearer how much I actually recommend each of these games. So, 1 through 4, genuinely good games. You should play these games. Number 5, My Fucking Child, the most interesting game on the system. Numbers 6 through 19, alright games that have their fun moments here and there. And then 20 through 26, these are like actually bad games. I would not recommend them really at all. And I think it goes without saying, I wish there were more like genuinely good games. But, you know, what you gonna do? So, final thoughts on the TurboGrafx Super CD. Also, yeah, I updated my bottle. It's been over a month since I recorded the intro, okay? Anyways, number 1, lack of exclusives. Like, I've removed all of the non-exclusives from the ranking, and for the super powerful CD system, a majority of these games not being designed to take advantage of the hardware was incredibly disappointing. Also, how the only really good exclusive game was Lords of Thunder, and even that got released on the Sega CD in 1995, 2 years after it released on the Super CD. 2, there was a major just like lack of love put into these games. Going through the base Turbo CD lineup, you can see my deep dive into that system in the link in the description, probably if I remember to put it there. There was this sense of wonder about what can we do on a CD. Every single game for that system really pushed amazing soundtracks, and they just kept getting better as time went on, and they figured it out, and you could feel them learning how to use the system. Going from Valis 2 to Valis 3 was like truly magical. It really felt like everyone was just excited for the system. And then the Super CD, it felt like series on it just kept getting significantly worse as time went on. It's fucking depressing. Like, it's depressing. So many ports without any extra attention given to them, just no care felt put into this thing. Number 3, the system really lacks a system seller. It's strange. Marketing-wise, the closest it gets is Shapeshifter, and Shapeshifter was definitely meant to be the system seller, but it's also one of the worst action platformers I've ever played. People make jokes about Keith Courage, but damn, Shapeshifter is the real, just terrible system seller. Terrible game. Number 4, there's a bad lineup of games in America. There's hundreds of Super CD games that released in Japan, and we only got 26 here in America. Fair enough for a smaller market, but localizing games like Riot Zone over stuff like Castlevania Rondo of Blood, Cosmic Fantasy 3, Double Dragon 2, Dragon Slayer Legend of the Heroes 2, Gradius 2, Puyo Puyo CD, Shin Megami Tensei, Snatcher, Madoki Memorial, Valis 1, Wizardry 1 through 5, just any of those, Ys 4, and that's just naming games that you might already be aware of. Who knows how many good games are out there that Americans just don't know about due to lack of localization. And then, number 5. Being nice to the system. The game release timeline is so much fucking better than the normal Turbo CD. I made a little chart, and look at that. Very strong launch, with them keeping up the energy throughout nearly all of 1993, and then slowly dying in 1994, but extremely good launch in terms of just amount of games. If there's one thing that Super CD did right, it's that there's always a new game to buy. And then, for context, here's the base TurboGrafx-CD timeline. It's so much more spread out, it has less games overall, there are multiple months where there's just nothing happening, but I would say that the games on the base Turbo CD are significantly higher quality, and each game had far more content. For context, the Super CD took me about 18 streams to play through all the games, where the base CD took me 31. So, take that as you will. Anyways, the TurboGrafx Super CD. I did enjoy going through the system. I think it's a scam, but it got me to play Prince of Persia and Lords of Thunder, so fun time. Can very easily see why the system failed over here though. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. This one was just simple to make, honestly. The Master System video was like a trial through hell to make it. The TurboGrafx-CD video is my baby. And this video kind of just flowed together. Just, I don't know, nice chill time. Everything just kind of worked out, yeah. I don't know what my next system deep dive is gonna be yet, but I hope to see you there for that, okay? So, push the subscribe button or something, I don't know. You have free will. And, yeah, the Super CD. I sure went through that. Okay, I gotta go play Prince of Persia 2 for the Super Nintendo. Bye everyone, take care.